Today, it's story time or stream of consciousness. Either way, you're going to be seeing a bunch of pictures that I've shot because nobody wants to see me think. So, I tried to map out what I was going to say here. I don't know exactly how to answer why I collect these things. I know that today I collect them because, one, I get massive enjoyment out of taking action figure photos of them. It's kind of a break from your common, ordinary, everyday stressor, and it drives me crazy. And just so we're all clear, I enjoy making the videos about them too, but to really think back and try and figure out what it is that got me started. I mean, when you think about it, I asked this question on YouTube and Twitter. I asked, what is it that got you started? Like, why do you collect action figures? And one of the responses that was hilarious, and we probably mostly can trace it back to this answer, is because my parents bought me toys. And obviously, I think that's a big thing. But here's the other thing: most kids' parents, at least in the States, bought them toys. So, what is it about some of us that makes us gravitate towards these as opposed to other things that so called adults end up collecting? And I say so called adults, that's pretty much all of us in the adult population. I have a theory that we're all basically kids. It's just the older we get, the more experience we have. But I digress. That's trying to think of it kind of overall for a lot of people. But when it comes to me, that's what I mean by the stream of consciousness. I was trying to write it down. I couldn't figure out exactly where to go with it. I wasn't sure exactly what got me started, as opposed to what other people end up collecting. Why do I collect action figures? And when I think about it, I was in the hospital a lot as a kid. So there was that, and something that brought me comfort were my figures. Whenever it wasn't that I had figures a ton at the hospital, I mean, I would have them from time to time, but when I got home, maybe it had to do with, hey, I'm home now and I can play, and these are my things. And it was almost maybe security. I don't know. Like, if I'm actually trying to think of the psychology of it, which is a fool's errand, I have absolutely no background in psychology, so I couldn't tell you if that was actually it. But I know when I get home, I just want to head to my toys and start playing and all that. I know when my sister was born, she's younger than I am, my folks wanted me to know that just because they were having another kid, it didn't mean they were going to forget about me. So I ended up getting a toy because of that. Beastman, for those of you curious. And yet somehow I'm just not that nostalgic for Masters of the Universe. But Beastman, very cool. So the more I think about what it is about just pop culture and these fictitious heroes in general, I know that action figures represent a lot of the stuff that I grew up really enjoying. I always enjoyed the simplicity of good versus evil. That's probably why I gravitated towards comic books. It's one of the reasons I wanted to become a comic book illustrator. In fact, my degree is in painting and drawing. Terrible painter, but I was a good enough person when it came to penciling, where I probably, had I pursued it, could have made it in comics. The problem is, I knew what it cost to live in New York, and I knew what pencilers were making while living in New York. And clearly I didn't love it enough, because when I thought about that, I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna go to New York and do penciling and only make that small amount of money. But that is why I got into art school, or why I went to art school, is so I could be a comic book illustrator. I was into Greek and Roman mythology, probably because comics got me started down that route. I've always enjoyed history when it comes to World War II, and when you think about, I guess, wars, it's probably what I consider, and this is not to get too political on anybody or anything like that, but when I really think about wars, I think of it as the last real good versus evil war out there. It was pretty easy to tell what people were fighting for. Now, maybe the motives weren't necessarily pure. I mean, from what I understand, America pretty much wanted to stay out of it until Pearl Harbor got bombed, and then, hey, game on, we got to take care of business. But it's still the last time I really think of good and evil and black and white, and there was always something to that, and yet the more popular characters and the ones that a lot of us gravitate towards are the ones that kind of play in the gray areas. One of my favorite characters growing up is Wolverine. And that's probably a lot of why he's one of my favorite figures. My Mafex Wolverine. Absolutely adore that thing. So there's the World War II angle, there's the mythology angle, there's the good versus evil angle, but what is it about just toys? I mean, I grew up at a time when probably arguably the best toys ever were being made, at least the ones that really fired your imagination based on the media that surrounded them, which I guess probably eliminates the need for imagination. But I grew up with Masters of the Universe and G.I. Joe and Transformers, all kinds of the earlier days of Toy Biz, and getting a lot of DC stuff and Marvel characters, going to KB a lot for those last two. And remember starting in when Spider-Man Classics came out and thinking, okay, these are awesome, and getting big time into Marvel Legends in the Toy Biz days and carrying that out for several years. So I don't know, maybe for me, I collect action figures because they were a security for me when I was a kid. Maybe because they stood for good versus evil, black versus white. Or, I don't know. But I have to think the answer is somewhere in that. I just know that today I get them because I can pose them up, use kind of my art degree and what I learned in how to draw comics the Marvel way by setting them all up in different movie scenes or cinematic type scenes or comic book type scenes and all that kind of stuff, and then fire a picture their way and do everything I can to make it just look really cool. So today, it's easy to answer. But what was the idea way back when? And I gotta be honest, when I really think about it, there's not a whole lot I can come up with definitively, aside from the security of it, aside from the good versus evil aspect that always drew me to it. And there was a lot of toys when I was in the hospital as I got older. This stuff kind of pursued me through my younger teenage years and early 20s and all that stuff too. And I got into stuff and I would have to be away from the house for long periods, and I ended up with a lot of Transformers. I ended up one time when I was in the hospital with all kinds of Transformers Energon. Probably one of the worst Transformers lines ever, but there was something about him that I loved. Following that, however, was Transformers Cybertron, and that's probably one of the best Transformers lines ever, so that was cool. So yeah, I guess when I really think about it, what got me started was the security and just almost a regularity, where when I could play with my toys, I knew that life was okay. Maybe there's some of that. Then there's the good and the evil, and then there's just the creativity I get to have with these action figures as I've gotten older and as I've learned a lot more when it comes to photography and design and all that stuff. Whew! That was long-winded, but I think I'm kind of touching on something there. Anyway, let's hear yours. What is it that you think is the reason that you collect action figures? Because hopefully you've got something that's a lot easier to get through and to try and process than what I just did, because, yeah, that was kind of a pain in the butt. Anyway, don't forget to click subscribe, like this video if you dig it, and hey, Don't forget that if you're shopping at Entertainment Earth, you'll get 10% off all in-stock items if you just type Toypixx in the order code. And if you spend $39 or more, you get free shipping on domestic orders. So that's pretty cool. That's also the end of the plug. So let me know, what is it you think got you into all this? And hey, until next time, have fun and happy snapping. See ya.